Many happy stories end with, and they lived happily ever after. Oh, everyone likes to hear this kind of story, don't you, girls and boys? But there are certain stories that have a sad ending. These are called tragedies. Even though we usually don't like to hear this kind of story, we can learn much from them. One such story is found in the Bible, right after the story of Adam and Eve. This story is a tragedy because someone let anger rule their life. It's terrible to allow anger to control our actions because it makes us say and do things we really don't mean. Why, from the tiny seed of anger, the big tree of hate and trouble will grow. I'm sure we often wonder, why do we have war? And why can't people live in peace? We can learn about these things in the first violent encounter between two men. These two men were brothers, and unusual as it may seem, the very first brothers on the earth. They were the sons of Adam and Eve, and their names were Cain and Abel. Cain was a hard-working farmer. If we were there then, we would see him arise early in the morning and go into the fields. Oh, there he goes now, with his hoe in his hand, ready to keep the field clear of weeds so the harvest would be soon. Let's leave Cain for a while, because I want to explain something very important to you. We'll come back later on. Do you remember when Adam and Eve sinned, and the Lord made clothes for them out of the skin of one animal? This was probably the time when the Lord explained to them how all men were to worship Him. The Lord showed them it was necessary for an innocent animal to die because of their sin. God wanted men to worship Him by offering sacrifices of animals to remind man that his sin was the reason death came into the world. The sacrifice would also remind man that someday the Savior, who we know as Jesus, would become the last great sacrifice and die for man's sins. This is why God wanted man to sacrifice a living animal to Him. Girls and boys, this might seem cruel to us, and we feel sorry for the poor animals. But when we remember that Jesus died, it also makes us sad. But then we're happy, because He was the last sacrifice, and those who believe and accept this sacrifice would live forever with Him. Isn't that something to really be happy about? Now, let's see if we can locate Cain and find out what he's up to. Oh, there he is, carrying a heavy bundle of fruit and vegetables to the altar of sacrifice. Oh, surely he knows that God wanted him to offer a living animal. Oh, perhaps he feels that the offering is good enough because of the long hours of hard work necessary to bring about a harvest from a tiny seed. Or it might be that he's too proud to go to his younger brother Abel and get a living animal. It could be that he feels that the laws of God really aren't to be kept. And perhaps he doesn't believe the teachings that he received from his parents. Well, whatever the reason, girls and boys, he is not following the will of God. When God tells us something in His book, the Bible, we should do it in faith, without question, and not do what we want to do, or what we think is right instead. We will see that if Cain would have obeyed the instructions that the Lord gave unto him through his parents, he would have been saved from the terrible trouble that is about to happen to him. Let's see if we can find out what's happening. See the other young man coming down the path with a lamb tied and propped up on his shoulders? It's Cain's younger brother Abel, bringing the sacrifice God commanded him to bring. Abel is the cattle and sheep herder in the family. It's his job to watch over the flock, leading them to pasture and water and protecting them from the wild beasts. He looks like he loves them and that he knows what it means to take this little lamb that he's cared for and offer him to the Lord. It seems to me that he looks a little sad to see an animal die because of his sin. But now he's glad, because the Lord will forgive him for his sin. Abel isn't questioning the Lord, but he's obeying the Lord. This obedience is called faith. And even though we don't always understand certain things about God, still we must believe and obey. This is faith that makes us trust grown-ups that we love and obey them. Did you ever disobey and then get punished? Why? Because you didn't believe. The time has come for them to offer the sacrifice to the Lord. Oh, look, the Lord is accepting the sacrifice of Abel, but he's not pleased with the sacrifice of Cain. Oh, Cain suddenly becomes angry. There he goes away from the presence of the Lord, running across the fields. Oh, Cain and Abel are now both gone. Let's walk on through the fields and see what we can find out. It's really difficult walking through the fields with this high grass. Listen, I think I hear the voice of the Lord. It is the Lord. Look over there. It's Cain, and the Lord is talking to him. Where is your brother, Abel? Cain is answering to the Lord, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord speaks again. What have you done? The voice of your dead brother cries out to me from the ground. Oh no! Cain was so angry that he killed his brother and buried him in the ground. Not only did Cain kill his brother, but he lied to God, thinking that he could get away with his sin. Oh, girls and boys, remember this. One sin leads to another. We cannot hide our sin, but we must get it out of our heart if we're to be happy. God is speaking again. You are cursed with a curse. The same ground that you buried your brother in will not let anything grow for you. You will be a wanderer and a fugitive. Cain is answering the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. People will find me and kill me. Look, God is promising Cain that if anyone would hurt him, that person would be punished 7 times. Now the Lord is putting a mark on Cain. Oh, we're so far away I can't see what it is. But people will know it and will leave Cain alone. Now Cain is leaving the presence of the Lord and going into a far country called Nod. Well, boys and girls, after this had happened and Cain was gone, Adam and Eve had another son, and they called him Seth. When Seth was grown up, he had a son, whom he called Enoch. It was during the life of Enoch that people started to pray. As the earth became more and more populated, for people lived a long time and had many children, a son was born into the world from the family of Seth. He was called Enoch. I think it would be interesting if we could find Enoch and see what was so special about this man. Oh, let's look around and see if we can find him. There's a man who is very godly, and he prays often and lives such a godly life. Oh, yes, that is Enoch. He's so close to God because he loves the Lord more than any man in the entire world. He is 365 years old, a young man, since people at that time lived for hundreds of years. Let's walk along a little way with Enoch, shall we? He seems to be so in love with the Lord that nothing else means very much to him. Oh, look! Suddenly he's rising from the ground and soaring to the sky. Why, he's going to heaven to be with the Lord. Enoch became the very first spaceman. He walked with the Lord, and God just took him to heaven to live with him. Before Enoch went to be with the Lord, He had many sons and daughters, and one of them, Methuselah, became the oldest man to ever live on the earth. He lived to the ripe old age of 969. Imagine, that's almost 1,000 years old. How would you like to have that many birthday parties, girls and boys?